One of the jurors commented that it would have been less than that except they took time out to drink a pop. We don't want to see that occur in 2012 with a young man like Trayvon Martin. The 911 call when it came through, the 911 operator said, "You should not follow him." The rules for the neighborhood watch that Mr. Zimmerman was a part of say that you shouldn't carry a gun, that you shouldn't try to apprehend a suspect, that you shouldn't follow a suspect. There was no evidence that Trayvon Martin was guilty of anything. He was not acting suspiciously. He claimed that he had a broken nose and that his head was bleeding and that he suffered injuries. But there was videotape released today from his arrest when he was taken into custody shortly afterward. First, he was not taken to the hospital, and the video clearly shows that there was no injury to Mr. Zimmerman. So we pray that the Justice Department and Attorney General Holder will investigate this matter and move forward with all deliberate speed to make sure that justice is done. As we were saying on the floor earlier, that in 2012, we can't have the repeat of an Emmett Till. Certainly the young people today may not know of Emmett Till, but they do know of Trayvon Martin. We're wearing hoodies because, again, God forbid that in the United States, that wearing a hoodie makes you guilty of a crime subject to the death penalty. God forbid that we say that if a woman had on a pair of denim jeans or a skirt that was revealing, that she's subject to be raped, or that if a man has on a turban, or whatever your attire might be, that allows you to be the subject of discriminatory activity. That's our challenge today. We seek justice. We don't know all of the facts, but the state of Florida has an obligation, and the United States Justice Department has an obligation to make sure that justice is done in this case. I see my colleague from the Assembly, he probably snuck away. I want to give him an opportunity to say something before they come and get him, because in that house, the sergeants will come drag him back. Ladies and gentlemen, Assemblyman Steve Bradford.
Thank you, Senator Wright, and I'm honored to join my colleagues in both the Senate and the Assembly in adjourning and recognizing the tragic death of Trayvon Martin. Though I didn't personally know him, nor is he a constituent of mine, I know thousands of Trayvon Martins. I know thousands of African American and Latino young men and boys who are victimized every day in America simply because of the color of their skin. They're arrested more, they're kicked out of school more, they're sentenced to jail more, and they're even sentenced to death more. I'm here to ask the question of why. Why in America, almost 150 years after slavery, is an African American's life not valued at the same level as their white counterpart? I'm here to ask the question of how. How can a young man with nothing more than candy in his hand and a soft drink be gunned down and now be accused of causing his death simply by what he was wearing? The same hoodie that Bill Belichick wears every Sunday on the sidelines of an NFL football game. Why isn't he menacing? Why isn't he threatening? Why is it safe for him to wear it and not African Americans and Latinos? We need to ask those questions. We need answers. It's time to realize that when people say it's not about race, I've lived long enough to know when they say it's not about race, it's usually about race. If the roles were reversed, I assure you, there would be an African American in jail right now facing possibly the death penalty. So I'm here to stand with my colleagues and bring attention to the need to bring justice, not only for Trayvon Martin, but all the young men and women of color who are constantly victimized daily in this country simply because of the color of their skin.
I'm going to ask my Senate colleague from my neighboring district, the Honorable Ted Lieu.
You know, every day in America, members of the minority community are targeted, and every now and then they get killed. And all of us here bring our own personal experiences, and I am reminded of when Vincent Chin was killed in Detroit because he was Asian American. And while I don't agree with their sentence in that case, at least Vincent Chin got a trial. All we're asking for here is enough conflicting evidence, I think, for a reasonable judge or jury to make a determination that Trayvon Martin was murdered. At the very least, there should be some proceeding where the facts can come out. I don't see how you can look at this case and simply decide that the person acted in self-defense. There's enough evidence that the person did not. And without a proceeding to look at the facts, we are, the folks in Florida have already made a decision that somehow this death was justified. I don't see how to get to that conclusion unless, frankly, they were racist. And at the very minimum, we are calling here for at least a proceeding for the facts to come out, because on the face of it, this is not acceptable.
I had another Assembly colleague who was able to get away from the 47th Assembly District in Los Angeles, the Honorable Holly Mitchell.
Thank you very much, Senator. And let me just say the Assembly is still in session, and so we have colleagues who are trying to come here to join us, members of our leadership, members of the Latino Women's Caucus, Asian Pacific Islander Caucus will be joining us as soon as they can. This tragic case has given us a unique opportunity as Californians, as Americans, as mothers and fathers, to have the broader conversation about race in America. I'm the mother of a young man, not born in Mississippi or Alabama, but in California. Of a young man born in Y2K, the year of the new millennium of new technology, not in 1958. And that young man and I had to sit down and have a conversation this weekend, and I had to explain to him what the word coon meant. Never in my wildest imagination, or the imagination of my parents, did anyone think that in 2012, a black woman in California, not Alabama or Mississippi, would have to tell a young man born in California in the year 2000 what the word coon meant and why he needed to know it, and why he needed to understand how he could be perceived by simply walking his dog in the park, as he often does, in the cold winter climate of Sacramento, with his hood up over his asthmatic, allergy-ridden self. Who would imagine? And so while the details of this case will hopefully come to fruition, thank you for joining us, Mr. Speaker, we have a responsibility as mothers and fathers, as Californians, to talk about in our very own state how race matters and what we are going to do in our homes, in our churches, in our communities, in the legislature, to talk about race in an informative, educational, unbiased, instructive way. So perhaps my son, in 15 plus years, won't have to sit down with his son, born in the new millennium, in California, not in Alabama, Florida, or Mississippi, and have a conversation about hoodies and Skittles and Arizona tea or the word coon.
We're joined by the Speaker of the California State Assembly. From Los Angeles, the Honorable John Perez.
Thank you, Senator. I just wanted to come and reinforce the important message of the day, that we have much more work to do to create a society that is free of all of our historic challenges that are intertwined in the question of race. The killing of Trayvon Martin really raises so many questions for us all, and we have to rededicate ourselves to this broader question of how we as a society, not just we as legislators, but how we as a society move past these difficult questions to create the kind of society we all seek. This is clearly a very difficult time for the Martin family, but it is a difficult time for families across this country. It has reinforced fears that so many parents have when their kids leave home at night. Fears that should never have to be there, but for the reality of the challenges for so many people in this country. So I want to thank everybody here for their leadership and bringing us together to continue to work on this challenging question.
Please welcome the Assemblyman from the 52nd Assembly District in the southeastern part of Los Angeles County, the Honorable Isidore Hall.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you, members. I am outraged of the lack of movement that has obviously taken place with this case. The fact that you would have the unmitigated gall to question whether or not an investigation should move forward is unthinkable. The BMWs of our society is real. What is the BMW of our society? It's black men walking in America. That has obviously caused a threat. It's a threat that has been elevated and continues to be elevated and demonstrated through violence, as you saw in Florida. This is a challenge that we are faced with each and every day of our lives. I see it in Compton, I see it in South Los Angeles, I see it in Paramount, I see it in Linwood. And as Holly Mitchell said, Member Mitchell said, this is something that we now have to explain to our kids and our nephews, our young boys in our community, even more now today than ever before. When at a point you have an African American president, and yet we're still dealing with the BMWs and the targeting of BMWs in our community is an outrage. And so yes, we must work and we must continue to work. And we must hold every level of the justice system and electeds accountable, not just in Florida, but in America, across this land, until we began to lift the question of race and deal with the question of race and make sure that we let everyone know that this is our land. This is the people of America's land. And everyone has a seat at the table for justice and equality. Thank you so much.
Last but certainly not least, the chair of the Legislative Black Caucus, my colleague from the 26th Senate District in Los Angeles, the Honorable Corinne Price.
Thank you, Senator Wright, and my legislative colleagues. I'm just, well, first of all, I'm proud to stand with my colleagues as we really underscore the unacceptable behavior of the authorities. And it really has become a teaching moment because notwithstanding so-called progress, we have a president, we had an African-American who chaired the Senate session today, but we still have real problems. And the fact that a kid with a hood, with some Skittles and some Arizona tea, is dead because he was a suspect, it was just totally unacceptable. And we can't stand for it. And so I'm proud that my colleagues taking a stand, not just on the floor, but in their communities as well, and that we continue to spread the message that we have to have equality. There's no other way. Black men are at risk in our society, and especially young black men. And there are kids, there are relatives, there are neighbors. And unless they can be safe, we can't be safe. So again, we stand in solidarity. We hope that the authorities will move quickly and expeditiously in bringing the person responsible to justice. I think it's significant that the response, our response here and around the country has been measured but in outrage. We understand that there is a lot at stake, and we don't want to fall into the hands of those who would have this be a moment of explosive violence. Violence it is, but it's something that we have to work with, we have to control, and we have to demand that all levels of government are respectful, are mindful of the responsibility of holding the trust, but more importantly, make sure that maintaining the kind of standards and ideals that we know are so important in our country. So thank you for your presence.
open for questions if there are any that you may have. Yes, sir.
I did a video yesterday that showed he was brought in, but there's reports that Damon was suffered from a nose, bloody face, and he saw the video, that didn't seem to be the case. And then also there was what looked like to be a very kind of relaxed atmosphere with the police and the way they dealt with it. Could you just describe what you felt when you saw that and what that indicates to you?
But I think my colleagues
Or
raised
anybody
that.
else too.
Okay, my colleagues raised that as well. I mean, if you had been an African American arrested in Florida under a similar circumstance as that, it would not have been the cordial experience that you saw Mr. Zimmerman having. If your nose was broken, you wouldn't have just walked through and, and had a happy smile on your face and you wouldn't walk through. There clearly were no bruises that were visible from the video. And it did not appear that he had a broken nose or required medical attention. The last time I checked, someone with a broken nose would have probably been taken to the hospital before they were just taken and walked through. But that evidence was not reviewed by the state attorney or the police chief before he simply accepted Mr. Zimmerman's word that this was a matter of self-defense and that he was attacked, which again adds to much of the outrage that many of us feel, because aside from having the body of Trayvon Martin, here you have a man who didn't go to the hospital apparently and did not seem to require medical attention when he was arrested.
Senator, yesterday when we talked, you said you wouldn't wear the hoodies on the floor. You would wait until after.
Okay, I'm gonna, if you'll give me just a second, I want to recognize the chair of the Latino caucus who also managed to get away, so we're kind of taking them in and letting them have an opportunity. The chair of the Latino caucus, Assemblyman Ricardo Lara.
Thank you. It's definitely an honor to be here, not only as the new chair of the Latino caucus, but to stand in solidarity with my brothers and sisters from the API caucus, African American Black Caucus, to stand here to talk about this tremendous tragedy. We are here in the legislature today celebrating Cesar Chavez Day, and a man who epitomized peace and not violence. And in a day in these days that we live in, where the color of your skin constitutes you being gunned down, reminds us of the need to reassess our race relations in this country. And so we stand here in solidarity.